Hello chess enthusiasts, my name is Miha and welcome to my chessrealm YouTube channel. So we are still at the World Rapid Championship. Let's go to the 9th round. Duel between Timur Gareyev and Jan Nepomniachtchi, better known as Nepo. Now Nepo is more known and has a far greater rating. Both of them are grandmasters though, so let's see what happened in the game. Timur Gareyev had white pieces and he started with knight to f3, knight to c6, c4, c5, and we have English opening. And now white plays g3, preparing to fianchetto his light square bishop. So black is the first one who strikes the center. So d5 was played. White plays bishop to g2. Now usually d4 is one of the options, but black first played knight to c6, and now white has more options at his disposal. Usually it's either c captures on d5 or maybe even d4, or white simply castles. But in the game white has decided to play queen to a4. Oh, already in the 5th move, I have found only one game with this position, so this is, let's say, a novelty. Black plays bishop to d7, unpinning the knight, and now c pawn captures on d5, knight recaptures, and now white plays knight to c3. Now, of course, if black captures, white recaptures, opens the diagonal. While white is developing, black is not, so black has decided to play knight goes back to c7. Of course, at some point, black would probably want to play e5, often diagonal for his bishop, also taking over more center. So white plays queen to a4. Another move with the queen, protecting this e5 square. So white intends to jump with his knight. So black plays g6. And now white plays knight to e5, attacking this bishop on d7, grabbing the bishop pair, which was a white plan all along. Well, of course, black cannot capture with knight because then we have queen to e5, double attack on rook and the pawn. But first of all, if black moves rook to g8, loses right to castle. f6 is also bad, squandering his pawn structure around his king. So in the game, black plays bishop to g7. And now knight captures on b7, queen recaptures. White has bishop pair, but one of his bishop is still undeveloped. So first white castles king side, and black also, and maybe here was a time to play maybe either d3, freeing his dark square bishop, trying to develop it, because black currently has the advantage in the development and his pieces are far better placed. But white plays another move with the queen. Queen to a4 was played, targeting this knight on c6. And now black prepares pawn sack, rook goes to g8. And now bishop captures on c6, so white returns the bishop pair. Well, black would have simply captured with the queen, but then queen recaptures, pawn recaptures. Black still leads in development, but his pawn structure is not the best. So in the game, black has decided to play b pawn captures on c6, offering this pawn on a7, so white grabs the opportunity. Queen to a7 was played. And now black sets up a little trap. Bishop goes to d4, protecting this pawn on c5. Well, if white tries to drive this bishop away, then we have rook goes to a8. Queen goes, for example, to b6, and now rook from f goes to b8, and now queen is trapped. Of course, white can capture, rook recaptures, white captures bishop, but white recaptures. For queen, white only has a rook and a bishop still in this position. Black is much better, if not totally winning. So in the game, white plays queen to a4, preparing to escape on d1 if necessary. And now black plays h5, preparing to harass white king at some point. Maybe white plays e3, driving the bishop away. Bishop goes back to g7, and now queen to c4, attacking this pawn on c5. There are many ways to defend it. For example, queen to f5 is totally solid option, but black plays knight to e6, protecting this pawn on c5. And black is still a pawn down, still his pieces are much better coordinated, and this dark square bishop will be very difficult to defend because he is blocked by both pawns. And black also threatens with rook to c4, harassing the queen, later reinforcing with another rook. So first white plays a3, preventing this rook to b4. And now black plays rook from f goes to d8, trying to take over this very weak d3 square. Well, let's say if white makes a random move, king to h1, then queen goes to d3. Even if white trades, then rook goes to the d3, blocking this pawn on d2. So this will be very difficult for white to defend. Also, knight on g5, later trying with knight to f3 is also a very unpleasant threat. So first, white plays f4, preventing this knight to g5 jump, also threatening with f5, for example. If now black plays queen to d3, then after queen captures, rook captures, then we have f5 attacking these both pieces. If white captures, then rook recaptures. No good way to defend this pawn, actually. And if, for example, knight goes back, let's say, to h8, then this pawn has a free way all the way to the a file. So here white is already somewhat better. So in the game, black plays f5, blocking this pawn on f4. So first, white plays b4, double attack on pawn on c5. Of course, also trying to open some lines for his dark square bishop. Now c pawn captures on b4, a pawn recaptures. Now black has to be careful. This knight on a6 is still under pin. Maybe black could try with bishop captures here on c3 after white recaptures. Still, all pawns are on a dark square at the same color as his bishop, so this bishop is quite immobile. And later with king to f7 defending this knight, and black has free queen, so this could definitely be one of the options. But in the game, black plays king to h7, getting his king out of this unpleasant pin. So now white plays rook goes to a6, trying to grab this pawn on c6. Well, black could have maybe easily tried with knight to c7, maybe even if rook captures on c6, then rook recaptures on b4. If white captures rook, then black recaptures another rook, so maybe this would be one of the options. In the game, however, black plays a rook from d goes to c8, defending, and now white plays knight to a4, threatening knight to b6, double attack on king and rook. So black plays queen to d6, getting his queen out of the fork. And now white plays bishop to a3, preparing this cover attack on the queen sometime maybe. And now black plays knight to c7, attacking rook on a6. Well, white more or less has no other option but to capture now this pawn on c6. And now black plays queen to d2. Now, of course, you notice that this knight is a double attack. So let's see if white can grab it. Well, if white captures this knight on c7, then rook simply recaptures. After a queen recaptures, then we have queen to e3 check. Now here, white would have to be careful. If white defends with rook, then we have bishop to d4, threatening mate in 2. And if white defends with queen to c2, then black simply captures bishop on a3. This rook is still pinned, and black will gain a change, and with this material, this should be winning for black. And if, for example, white plays king to h1, then we have queen to e4 check, king goes back to g1, and now bishop to d4 check. Now, white can only defend with rook to f2. After queen to e1 check, king goes to g2, queen to f2 check. Of course, king cannot go to h1 because queen to g1 checkmate, so king could only go to h3. After queen to f1 check, the only option is king to h4 and bishop to f6 checkmate. So here the correct continuation would be king to g2. So white has this opportunity of immediate escaping to h3. Now, even if black plays bishop to d4, threatening with queen to e2 with mate in 4, now black plays knight to c3, protecting this e4 square, and with the correct continuation, the game would be roughly equal. Okay, so in the game, white doesn't capture knight on c7. Instead, the queen to c1 was played, offering the trade of queens. Well, of course, if black captures on c1, then rook recaptures, and then there goes our knight, or even rook, whatever. So black plays queen goes back to d7, and now rook goes to d1, attacking the queen. So black could have removed the queen back to e8, for example, but black has decided to interfere, this diagonal, so knight to d5 was played. Now trading rooks is definitely one of the options, but white has decided to play b5, protecting this rook on c6. Well, of course, why black cannot capture because then this rook is double attack. Well, of course, black would capture on c6, but after c pawn recaptures, after queen to e6 still protecting this knight, then if white captures here, black would have to be very careful, because if queen captures, then we have c7 attacking the rook. If rook goes to c8, then knight goes to b6, forking both pieces. So here in this position, black would have to play rook on b1, pinning this queen on c1, forcing white to play queen to b1. But now this pawn on e3 is undefended, queen goes to e3, and now we have perpetual check. Let's say king goes, let's say for example on g2, queen to let's say e2, king to h3, queen to g4, king to g2, again queen to e2, king to g1, queen to e3, let's say king to f1, then queen to f3. Well, king cannot go to e1 because then we have queen to h1, and there goes our queen. So here white would have to stay here on this f1, g1, whatever, and this would be a perpetual check. In the game, however, black makes almost fatal blunder. e6 was played, losing control over e6 square, and here was a chance for white to win the game, and the correct continuation was bishop goes to e6, attacking this rook on b8. Of course, black would capture, but then after rook captures, queen captures, black exchange down, white is still better, but still white would need some precision to win the game. If, however, rook would go to a8, then we have this beautiful X-ray pattern. Rook is X-raying queen on d7, and knight is preparing to here jump on b6, forking all these pieces. So first bishop to e5, and if black captures, now knight goes to b6. Of course, knight cannot recapture because white captures queen. So after queen goes to b7, so after knight captures on a8, then maybe rook recaptures, but then f-pawn captures this bishop. Even if queen captures on b5, white would probably play, I don't know, e4, preparing queen to b5, then later rook grabs this pawn, and later putting pressure on the g6 square. So this is, even only with exchange up, this is a winning for white. Okay, let's go back to our game. So white doesn't play bishop to d6. Instead, knight to c3 was played. Of course, this knight is pinned, so cannot capture. Still, black could try with rook to c6. After c pawn recaptured, queen can easily capture on c6. After that, knight here captured, but of course first captures queen, rook recaptures, d pawn, e pawn recaptures on c5. Material is equal in position. This would probably be a draw. In the game, however, Nepo has decided to trade the queen for some pieces, so queen captures on c6. Of course, white has no other options but to recaptures, and now knight captures here on c3, since knight was not protected by a rook anymore, taking this rook on d1, but more important, threatening knight to e2, forking both king and the queen. Maybe white could try with rook to e1, then probably rook captures on here on c6. Still threatening with knight to e2 with check and discover a tank on the queen. Well, white could go to with queen to d2, but then maybe rook to a6, attacking bishop, bishop to b2, knight goes to e4. Now this is a very strong outpost, again attacking the queen. Difficult to say. Right, machine said the position is rather equal. Okay, so in the game, white has decided to get his king out of this fork, so king goes to g2. Now, of course, knight captures on d1, queen recaptures, and now rook captures on c6. Both sides have an equal number of pawns, but black has 2 rooks. So Nepo has 2 rooks versus queen. During the World Championship match, Carlsen had 2 rooks versus Nepo's queen, so now the roles are reversed. So yeah, black definitely wants to somehow invade the second rank, harassing this white king, then it would be all over. Maybe white could try king to h3, getting his king to safety immediately. Instead, white plays queen to d7. Of course, pinning this bishop on g7, maybe threatening later with bishop to f8. Still, white loses control over c4 square, so first rook goes to c2 check. And we have reached the critical position in the game here. White should have played king to h3 immediately, but instead king goes to f3, and this was a fatal blunder. And now black plays rook to a8, targeting this bishop on a3. Well, of course, white cannot simply remove bishop, for example, to I don't know, e7, because then rook invades the second rank, threatening with rook to f2 mate in 1. Well, g4 doesn't help, because h-pawn captures on g4, then after king to g3, rook to g2 check, king can only go to h4, after rook to h2, king to g3, rook from a goes to g2, it's checkmate. If king goes to g5, again rook to h5, checkmate. But you might wonder, what about the bishop to b4? Now after rook to a2, bishop goes to e2, protecting this f2 square. Well, black simply rook to c1, attacking the bishop. If bishop goes, I don't know, before, then rook to f1, checkmate. If, however, white interferes this second rank, then simply rook to d2, this bishop is pinned, black gains decisive material. Well, maybe the best option here for white would be simply to defend bishop with queen to e7. Well, then black would probably try with rook to first h2, capturing this pawn on h2. Well, so here white has to protect this bishop on a3, and rook has to find some way to enter the second rank. So maybe after, I don't know, queen to c5, then probably rook to a4, I don't know, queen to d6, rook to c4, and after rook enters the second rank, then white is done. In the game, white has decided to lose sooner, so queen to d3 was played, still protecting this bishop on a3, but now rook goes to c3, rook is protected, double attack on the queen and the bishop, white loses decisive material, and realizing this in this position, Timur Gareyev resigned the game. So I hope you like this game, I hope you have learned something from it. If you have any questions, my email is below in the description. Of course, I invite you to visit my Instagram page. That's it for now, and see you soon.